There was a long season when my smile felt like a borrowed thing, given out in pieces, like spare change, to keep peace and keep someone else comfortable. Mornings began with 2 cups of coffee because somewhere in my habit I'd promised to make one for 2. I learned how to set my face to easy so arguments felt smaller and their silences felt fillable. I stopped saying what I meant, because saying it might make them uncomfortable, and I hated being the storm. My phone kept the map of our memories, the photos, the playlists, the messages that started with remember when and ended with excuses. At night I practiced smiles in the mirror until my cheeks hurt from practice, not from joy. Friends told me I was strong. What they meant was I was quiet. What I meant was I was tired. One afternoon, tired in the way that lives in your bones, I got on the bus with that practiced face still warm. A child at the seat across from me tripped on his shoelace and burst into a laugh that had no other purpose than being itself. He laughed at the air, at the absurd wobble of his shoelace, at his own tiny, ridiculous defeat, and the sound was so free it felt illegal. Something in my chest loosened like a drawer that had been jammed for years. I laughed. Not the polite puff of air I kept for strangers, but a surprised, clumsy laugh that came from somewhere unused. It surprised the child. It surprised me more. That night I let the laugh live in my throat and follow me home. I made 1 cup of coffee and noticed how the steam curled into the shape of a small, honest smile on my face. I pulled out my phone and stared at the conversation thread I'd kept open for what IFS and I misuse. My thumb hovered. I didn't text. I deleted a photo, then another, and my fingers trembled not from loss but from doing something I'd been too loyal to do before, choosing myself. Over the next few weeks, the laugh came easier. It came when I burnt the toast and danced with the smoke alarm, swatting at it like it was the intruder in a private joke. It came when my friend told that ridiculous story about Dad trying to DIY a shelf and ending up with a modern art disaster. It came when I watched a sitcom where someone finally said the thing everyone was afraid to say, and the whole audience laughed like apology and relief. One morning, in a crowded grocery store, I caught my reflection in the polished freezer door. There I was, hair half-tamed, eyebrows doing that thing they do when I'm listening, eyes bright from sleep, and my mouth was making a smile that belonged on my face alone. For the first time since I could remember, the smile didn't feel like an offering. It felt like a homecoming. I stopped making 2 coffees. I stopped checking my phone the exact way I'd learned to check it, always hoping, always timing my heartbeat to the blue dot that said seen. I unfollowed accounts that taught me to watch their life like a lesson plan for my grief. I put the sweater he left behind into a donation bag not with fury, but with a quiet, green relief, like opening a window and letting stale air go. I started saying no to things that kept me small and yes to small things that made me glow. A pottery class that ruined half my pots and made me proud anyway. A park bench where strangers become small stories. A Thursday night at a jazz bar just because the trumpet made my spine lighter. Once, someone I used to love called and said, "You sound different." I laughed in that easy, honest way, and he listened to the laugh like he had front row tickets to something he used to own. He asked if I was happier. I said, "I'm learning to be mine." There was a pause like a closed door he used to walk through. He said, "I'm glad." He didn't offer to come back. He didn't ask for permission to keep the smile he once borrowed. That afternoon, I walked without music and listened to how the city gave me little gifts. A neighbor's laughter stitched through an open window, a vendor shouting a joke about mangoes, a stranger's dog putting a wet nose in my palm like it had known me forever. Each ordinary thing piled up like small mirrors showing me the same face, the one that answered back. My laughter became the sound my heart made when it recognized its own company. Closure wasn't one big cinematic moment. It was 1,000 tiny permissions I gave myself. To be quiet, to be noisy, to leave, to stay, to eat French fries at midnight, to cry in the shower without performing sorrow for anyone else. It was the right to keep parts of me that I had set on loan. It was the realization that nothing I had given away had to be reclaimed with anger. It could be welcomed back with gratitude. The day the realization settled like light in the room when you open the curtains, a neighbor's baby laughed at something only she saw. I laughed with her. A passing teenager handed me a crumpled flyer and mouthed a bad word to a friend, and the humor was small and pure. I laughed with him. These were not laughs because someone had approved me. They were laughs because my ribs had room for air again. I began to keep a small list of stupid, ecstatic things: the way the kettle sings, the smell of rain on hot asphalt, a stranger's shoes that somehow made the whole stretch of pavement look like a runway. I read it when doubt came. When the doubt whispered that I only smiled to make others feel steady, I found my list and let each absurdity lift my chin. Months later, a friend filmed me accidentally laughing so hard my tea sloshed out of the cup. She sent it with one line: "You're back." I watched the clip and watched myself fall apart with laughter and then hold myself together with a laugh that didn't ask for acceptance. I saw the truth plainly. My face had learned to be unapologetically itself. There are days when the memory of giving my smile away still stirs like a soft wind. I sit with it. I tell it thank you for the ways it kept me alive then, and gently close the book on the times I made myself small. I do not pretend there is no ache. There is. But ache now sits next to joy as equals, not predators. One evening I stood on my small balcony and watched the city put on its indifferent, glorious light show. A neighbor below laughed at a joke that might have been about nothing. Someone played a song on a guitar that was half-tuned and wholehearted. I laughed too, with the universe, not at it. My reflection in the glass was smiling, and this time the mirror did not ask permission. If closure had a shape, maybe it would be a smile that lasts longer than a heartbeat. Maybe it's less about forgetting and more about choosing where your light goes. I learned to make my happiness a habit that fed me, not a performance for a crowd that had already left the theater. So when I say I laughed, really laughed, I mean the kind of laugh that comes from the bottom of a body that remembers how to hold joy without credit. I mean the laugh that surprises you at 3 in the afternoon in a grocery aisle and leaves you with tears at the corners of your eyes and an odd, blessed calm. And then I understood plainly, as if someone had turned on an honest lamp in my chest, it wasn't for them anymore. It was for me. You said.